Hello everybody and welcome to Wolfie TV, and our Premier League predictions are back for another week. Great support on last week's Premier League predictions, and I've had a look at obviously the predictions and the fixtures we've got coming up this week, and they're really interesting. So I'm looking forward to doing this one, and let's get straight into them. And we're going to kick off with a massive game that takes place at Villa Park. It's Aston Villa against Newcastle United, two teams that are full of confidence, really are flying at the moment, and you wouldn't really bet against either of them, would you? It's a really hard one to predict this. You know, we see that Villa are desperately plodding along and continuing their impressive form under Emery. And it kind of reminds you, doesn't it, the form that they've had under Emery, similar to when Eddie Howe took over Newcastle there at the same sort of point the previous season. You know, two managers have come in and done fantastic things with their respective clubs. And I think that's going to make for an absolute cracker. This is obviously the early kickoff, and I think it's going to be a really hard one to predict. So, you know, as they usually say, don't bat the early kickoff. I think the one thing that we can predict, though, accurately is that there's going to be goals in this one. I think there is going to be goals. And I just have a feeling, especially with Villa being at home, that the points will be shared. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw to kick off what I think is going to be an absolutely great weekend of football. Let's jump into another game, and we're now obviously at the Saturday 3 o'clock kickoffs, and it's Southampton who take on Crystal Palace, and it really is last chance saloon for Southampton at this stage. They need a result. Crystal Palace, if they got the win in this fixture, you'd probably say that they are pretty much safe by that point. Palace have had a wonderful term of form since Roy Hodgson rejoining the club. 75 years old, Roy Hodgson, and he's showing some of these younger managers exactly how it's done. Palace, we know that they're really exciting when they're on the attack. And to be honest, it's what I've really found interesting is we know they've got those excited players. Roy's managed to give them the confidence and also managed to change things up. So they are now adding the goals as well as the excitement to the game. And that has really transformed Crystal Palace with the amount of shots they're having. And of course, the goals that they are also contributing. Southampton, on the other hand, they really need a result now. You can't blame them for obviously losing to Manchester City in the game last week. If you're being positive, at least they got a goal through, I think it was Mara that got the goal, but they were heavily defeated. I think this is maybe gives Saints a little chance, for it is obviously at St. Mary's, but I think the form that Crystal Palace find them in, I think they will nick it, and I am going to go 3-1 to Palace. Sorry, Southampton fans. Let's move on to another team now that's in this relegation battle, and that is Everton, who take on Fulham. Now, despite Fulham's league position, and we've obviously gave plaudits to Fulham, and they have done really well this season, their form is absolutely terrible, especially in the last 5 fixtures. You know, especially with losing Mitrovic as well. I do fancy these guys to start slipping down the table, and coming up against Everton at home is not going to be an easy task. Everton themselves could do with getting some points out of this game, and Fulham really not in good form. In fact, I do fancy maybe one that people won't predict so much, but I am going to back Everton, especially at home. I think they'll get the job done against Fulham. I think it'll be a typical Sean Dyche performance. I think Everton will get the goal, and they'll basically then hold out to the clean sheet, and they'll manage to do it. Everton 1, Fulham 0. Let's move on to speak about Spurs, who take on Bournemouth. And yet again, no surprise, another team that is in this relegation battle. And Spurs are going for Europe. Spurs obviously had a controversial win against Brighton last weekend. You know, you just thought 4 or 5 decisions really went in their favour. It could have gone the other way, and definitely some of them should have, especially the foul, which should have been given a penalty to Brighton. But the Spurs will put that behind them. Of course, they'll be focusing on just continuing moving on, getting those points. But they're taking on a Bournemouth team which really seems to have turned some corner in this relegation battle. They'll be coming in with some confidence. And it feels like one of those games that Spurs historically could slip off on. You know, these ones where you expect Spurs to win are often the ones where they go and lose their head at the same time as well. I do think I am going to back Spurs, though. I am going to play it safe. I'm going to say a 2-0 win for Spurs. Guys, just a quick one for me before we get back to the video. Last week, we managed 75 likes I want 100 this week, guys. So if you can do me a massive favor, hit that like button. We also got lots of new people joining the channel and subscribing last week. So if you haven't done so already and you are enjoying the video, please do hit that subscribe button as well. And let's get back to those Premier League predictions. Let's move on. Wolves taking on Brentford, guys. As you know, with my Premier League predictions now, we will speak about Wolves in our full match preview, which will come out tomorrow. So if you are a Wolves fan or a Brentford fan, make sure to check that one out tomorrow. Let's move on to speak about Chelsea, who take on Brighton. And this is not going to be any easy task by any means. Of course, Graham Potter hasn't got to face his old club in Brighton. He has been replaced a couple of weeks prior, and Frank Lampard has come in. One thing that Lampard will be wanting is a better performance than what happened against Wolves. Chelsea really looked shambolic, but in all honesty, when I saw Cucurella starting and I saw Conor Gallagher starting, it filled me with some confidence. The problem that Chelsea have is they look really, really poor in front of goal. In fact, all the teams above them have scored more, but not all the teams above them have conceded as many as Chelsea. They've actually got a pretty solid defence if you look at the amount of goals they've conceded this year. Their problem now is scoring in front of goal, and I don't really see how that changes this season. Brighton, on the other hand, have not had any problem scoring in front of goals. They've got multiple players that can get a goal, and, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if that does come into play, even if though it is at Stamford Bridge. I think that Chelsea could really do with a turnaround, but unfortunately, Chelsea fans, I don't think you're going to get it against Brighton. I'm going to back Brighton purely just because I think they've got more goals in them than Chelsea. I don't think Chelsea will blank out again. I think they will get one goal, but I am going to go 3-1 to Brighton in this one. I just don't think Frank Lampard is a really good manager at all. Let's move on to speaking about Manchester City, who take on Leicester. And of course, Leicester master plan to avoid relegation is to appoint Dean Smith, a man that managed to take Norwich down just 12 months before. It really does make sense, doesn't it, to hire a man who basically got a team relegated when you're trying to save yourself from going down. But one thing that you would say, I guess, for Dean Smith is at least it is a change. And I know and respect the fact that many Leicester fans just really did feel they needed a change from Brendan Rodgers and someone that will come in and do something different. Of course, he's also got John Terry, a part of his backline staff. You do wonder if he'll be able to shore up the goals that Leicester have been conceding, because that has been the main problem for Leicester this season. Not so much for the goals they've scored, it's been the amount of goals that they've been conceding at the other end. And maybe John Terry and Dean Smith will be able to reduce that, and that will obviously maybe then lead on to better results. But in his first game in charge, he's obviously not got an easy task. He's got to go and take on Manchester City at the Etihad as well. And Manchester City seem to be running rampant in the Premier League at the moment. They really do look unstoppable. And I don't think anything's going to change and stop them in this fixture, even if Leicester do have a bit of new manager syndrome. So I am going to go Manchester City 3, Leicester City 0. Let's move on and speak about a huge, huge game at the top. We've just spoke about Manchester City, who are going after that title. The other team that can go after the title, of course, is Arsenal. Now, if Arsenal still win all the games, the Premier League is very still much in their hands. But I'm really interested to see how Arsenal respond, because the pressure will be a bit more on them now, with that gap obviously reducing by 2 points when they did throw away a lead against Liverpool for it to be 2-2. It was an absolutely brilliant game to watch. It could have actually gone to either team, and both teams had chances in the dying embers of the game. Ramsdale obviously made some fantastic saves in that one as well. And, you know, I'm really interested to see basically how Arsenal respond, because I think it's going to be a really interesting fixture here. They go to West Ham. It is a London derby, and of course it is at the London Stadium. I'd be a little bit more confident maybe if it was at the Emirates. If you're at West Ham, I think your plan has to be to get 1-0 in front. If you can get 1-0 in front, that's going to put so much pressure on Arsenal. And what you can't do and can't afford to do is concede an early goal. So I do think maybe West Ham might play this defensively to start off with. Try and just keep Arsenal at bay, even maybe for the first 60 minutes, and just continue to try and frustrate them and see if they have got that bite to obviously continue and go ahead and get the win. Arsenal really do need the win, though. They can't afford to drop points. and I just have the feeling that they will. I'm going to go 2-0 to Arsenal in this fixture. Apologies, West Ham fans. Let's move on and speak about Nottingham Forest, who take on Manchester United. And obviously, Nottingham Forest form has dropped considerably. But one thing that they will give them maybe just a little bit of confidence if you're a Nottingham Forest fan is the fact that this fixture is at home. I've spoke about on this channel quite a lot how the home form for Nottingham Forest has been much better than the away form this season for them. But Man United are also going into the game in good stead. You know, they've kind of come back from that fixture they had a couple of fixtures ago now against Newcastle, where they didn't look impressive, but they have come back since then and have obviously performed well, getting the win against fellow relegation rivals, actually, for Forest in Everton. I think this is going to be a really interesting game because, as we know, Forest have pulled off some big wins at home. But the one thing that Forest are currently lacking is confidence. And from what I saw on Twitter, it did look like there seems to be a little part of the Forest crowd starting to turn on the players, which I don't think will come across on the weekend. I think, you know, especially at Forest Stadium, I think the crowd will all pull together. I don't think that's going to quite be enough, though. I don't think it's going to be easy for Man United. And I do realise I've probably just been picking the bigger teams in this predictions. I do apologise, but I am going to back United narrowly. I'm going to say to get the job done 2-1. I think this is the last fixture of the weekend that I'm going to have to speak about, and it's Leeds who take on Liverpool. This is going to be a really interesting one because Leeds just seem to be one of those teams that can come out absolutely terribly, or they come out decent since obviously the new appointment of manager. Liverpool seem to be finding their momentum though. You know, they looked really good against Arsenal, and they obviously followed that up the prior game with a draw against Chelsea. The one thing you would say for Liverpool, though, is it is 2 back-to-back draws, and I know that seems a little harsh because they were against Chelsea and Arsenal, but they will be wanting to get some wins on the board if we're going to make Europe this season. I just have a feeling, though, this is the one where I'm going to throw a bit of a screwball. And I am going to say this one's going to finish in a 1-1 draw. For some reason, I just have an odd feeling that Leeds might pull it off. Guys, let me know your Premier League predictions as always. And as I've said in the video, if you have enjoyed it, hit that like button. Let's see if we can get to 100 likes. And also do us a favour, subscribe to the channel if you are new here. Weekly Premier League predictions coming. And even though our content has moved towards more Wolves stuff, there's going to be plenty of stuff if you're not a Wolves fan as well. So there's always going to be a place for you on this channel, guys. So hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll catch you on next week's predictions. Take care. Have a good one. Goodbye.